The tension in that Fox News studio was not merely palpable. It was a physical force, thick and unyielding as concrete, pressing down on everyone and everything. Sean Hannity, ensconced behind his meticulously polished, imposing desk, exuded a familiar aura of smug confidence. That trademark smirk, a permanent fixture that seemed etched into his very being, suggested he had the perfect target meticulously lined up for yet another one of his signature televised takedowns. For over 2 decades, Hannity had perfected the art of ambush journalism, transforming political discourse into a brutal performance art, where winning wasn't about being right, but about being the loudest, the most overwhelming. He didn't bring guests onto his show for genuine debate. They were merely props, punching bags for his predetermined right-leaning narratives. His preparation style was the stuff of Fox News legend. Hours before each broadcast, he and his team would compile exhaustive opposition research, craft loaded, insidious questions, and strategize the precise moments to cut off any guest who dared to gain momentum or articulate a coherent response. He had built an empire on interruption, deflection, and the sheer force of prepackaged sound bites designed to make his opponents look foolish or extreme. Tonight, he believed, would be no different. Across from him sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas. At 43, the freshman Democrat had been making undeniable waves, not just in the hushed halls of Capitol Hill, but across the digital landscape with her fearless committee performances and virally explosive social media moments. She was sharp, articulate, and undeniably charismatic, qualities that Hannity, in his hubris, perceived as mere superficiality. He had done his homework, or so he thought. His usual arsenal of talking points lay ready, meticulously arranged in his mind, poised to paint Crockett as nothing more than another radical progressive, all flash and no substance. He was ready to expose her, to diminish her, to secure another easy political victory for his loyal audience. But what Sean Hannity, in his profound miscalculation, failed to comprehend was that the former civil rights attorney turned Congresswoman had not merely walked into that studio, she had entered a battleground, fully aware of the treacherous terrain and the formidable opponent she faced. What she brought with her, however, was not just a well-rehearsed set of talking points, but something far more devastating. An unwavering commitment to truth, backed by an unparalleled dedication to preparation. This wasn't going to be another softball interview, where Hannity could effortlessly control the narrative and score cheap political points. Jasmine Crockett had come prepared for war, armed with an intellect sharpened in courtrooms where the stakes were real and the consequences immediate. She was about to remind everyone watching why you should never, under any circumstances, underestimate a prosecutor who has done her homework. What transpired in the next 15 minutes would not only become the most viral political moment of the year, but would witness Crockett delivering such a devastating counterattack that even Hannity's own audience would be compelled to applaud. She didn't just flip the script, she rewrote the entire playbook on how to handle hostile media interviews, exposing the very core of Hannity's deceptive practices. Before we dive into this incredible confrontation that's breaking the internet right now, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below so you never miss these explosive political moments. Trust me, what Jasmine Crockett did to Sean Hannity will leave you absolutely speechless. The show opened with Hannity's typical, carefully choreographed introduction, his voice dripping with that signature, condescending tone he so readily reserved for Democratic guests. He was already setting the frame, attempting to diminish Congresswoman Crockett before the real conversation, as he saw it, even began. His words were a barbed wire fence, designed to box her in, to reduce her substantive policy work to mere political theater. "Congresswoman," Hannity began, that familiar, almost predatory smirk spreading across his face, You've been very critical of Republican efforts to secure our border, very critical of common-sense policies that would protect American citizens. It was a loaded question, expertly crafted to put Crockett on the defensive from the very first second, a familiar trap. Most guests, caught in the glare of the studio lights and the rapid-fire aggression, would instinctively stumble. They would try to explain, to clarify that they didn't in fact hate border security. They would equivocate, stammer, and ultimately appear weak, while Hannity, like a seasoned predator, prepared his next equally devastating attack. This was his proven formula for an easy victory. But Jasmine Crockett was not most guests. She didn't stumble. She didn't even flinch. Instead, a calm, almost serene smile touched her lips, a smile that held a quiet, dangerous confidence. "Sean, I appreciate you having me on," she said, her voice not just calm, but perfectly measured, resonating with an unshakable conviction. "But before we talk about what I supposedly hate, let's talk about what you love." The effect was instantaneous and electrifying. The studio, moments ago buzzing with the barely contained tension, fell silent. A profound, almost disbelieving quiet descended. This wasn't how guests were supposed to respond. They were supposed to get defensive, to cede control, to allow Hannity to dictate the terms of engagement. They were most certainly not supposed to go on the offensive, especially not with such a disarming yet powerful pivot. Hannity's trademark smirk flickered, a tiny, almost imperceptible crack in his carefully constructed facade, before he visibly tried to regain control, to reassert his dominance. "Well, that's quite an accusation, Congresswoman," he blustered, attempting to dismiss her move as baseless. But Crockett was already in motion. With deliberate, unhurried grace, she reached into her folder, her movements precise, prosecutorial. "Let's talk about facts, Sean," she cut him off, her voice still steady, unwavering. "Last week, on this very show, you told your audience that Democrats had voted to defund border security." With a snap, she pulled out a document, neatly folded, and held it up to the camera. It was not a prop, it was evidence. "This is the actual voting record," she declared, the paper a stark visual rebuttal to his words. "Not only did Democrats not vote to defund border security, we actually voted to increase funding by 12%. Hannity's face, usually a mask of unyielding certainty, began to redden. His eyes flickered towards the document, then back to Crockett, then to the cameras. He wasn't used to guests arriving so thoroughly prepared, armed with documentation, with actual evidence that directly contradicted his carefully constructed, often fact-free narratives. His entire strategy hinged on the assumption that guests would be caught off guard, unable to instantly fact-check his assertions. Crockett's voice, though calm, was now imbued with the unmistakable cadence of a prosecutor systematically dismantling a false claim. She was not debating, she was presenting a case, and the jury was millions of viewers watching at home. This was just the beginning. Crockett wasn't finished. Her voice, still remarkably steady and prosecutorial, cut through the studio's stunned silence. She pulled out another document, its stark black and white print a damning counterpoint to Hannity's bluster. "The comprehensive immigration bill that Democrats passed," she stated, holding it aloft for the cameras, ensuring every viewer could see the evidence, included $25 billion for border security. That's more than any Republican proposal in the last decade. The fact hung in the air, undeniable and inconvenient. Then came the direct, unyielding challenge. "So either you didn't do your research, Sean, or you deliberately lied to your audience." The question wasn't rhetorical. It hung there like a gauntlet thrown, demanding an answer. Hannity, accustomed to being the interrogator, the one asking the gotcha questions, was now on the receiving end. His usual tactic of interrupting, deflecting, and overwhelming wasn't working. Crockett wasn't giving him openings to exploit. She was systematically closing every one. His voice rising, tinged with a desperation he rarely displayed, Hannity attempted to regain control, to shift the narrative back to his preferred ground. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he nearly shouted, falling back on a familiar accusation. "You Democrats always want to change the subject when you can't defend your radical positions. The American people want answers about why you support policies that the American people deserve the truth." He stammered, his flow broken, his composure visibly cracking. But before he could fully articulate his accusation, Crockett cut him off, sharply, decisively. Then a brilliant tactical maneuver unfolded that left Hannity temporarily speechless. She turned, pivoting her body to face the cameras directly, addressing not him, but his vast audience. Her eyes, filled with a calm intensity, looked straight into the lens, connecting with millions watching at home. "Folks watching at home, you deserve better than this." It was a direct appeal, bypassing the gatekeeper, speaking directly to the very people Hannity claimed to represent. Hannity was scrambling now, his flagship show spinning wildly out of his control. "This is unbelievable," he muttered, a mix of frustration and disbelief coloring his tone. Crockett turned back to face him, her eyes flashing with the kind of laser-focused intensity that had made her legendary in courtrooms. "Let's talk about records, Sean." She didn't wait for a response. "In my first year in Congress, I've co-sponsored 17 pieces of bipartisan legislation. I've held 12 town halls in my district." She paused, letting the verifiable information sink in, allowing the weight of her actual work to contrast with Hannity's caricatures. The studio audience, packed with Hannity's supporters, began to murmur, a low hum of surprise. Some were actually nodding along with Crockett's points. This wasn't supposed to happen in Hannity's carefully controlled environment. His audience was supposed to be a monolithic block. "I informed the American people," Hannity protested, but his voice lacked its usual booming confidence, tinged now with a defensive note. Crockett reached for another document, her movements precise, almost ceremonial. "Because I have here," she announced, her voice unwavering, "a fact-check analysis of your show from the past month. 63 false or misleading statements. 63, Sean!" She held up the document for the cameras, its contents a devastating indictment. "This isn't journalism, it's propaganda." Hannity was visibly rattled now, his face pale, his bluster evaporating. His flagship show had become a public dissection of his own credibility, broadcast live to millions of unsuspecting viewers. He tried one last desperate gambit, falling back on his favorite persecution complex. "This is clearly a coordinated attack by the radical left to silence conservative voices," he stammered, attempting to deflect blame. Crockett merely smiled again, the same calm, knowing smile she'd worn at the beginning of the segment. "Sean," she countered, her voice quiet, yet utterly devastating. "The only person destroying your credibility here is you." "Sean," Crockett continued, her voice quiet, yet utterly devastating, "the only person destroying your credibility here is you." And then, for the ultimate unassailable blow, she pulled out one final paper, holding it up with the deliberate precision of a surgeon. "Speaking of coordination, Sean, should we talk about the internal Fox News memos that show how you coordinate your talking points with Republican political operatives?" The question hit with the force of a thunderbolt. The blood visibly drained from Hannity's face, leaving it a stark ashen white. The existence of those memos had been whispered about for years in media circles, a persistent rumor, a dark secret, but no one had ever produced them live on national television. The legal implications were staggering, monumental, not just for Hannity himself, but for the monolithic empire of Fox News as a whole. "What?" he managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper, the bluster completely gone, replaced by a raw, naked fear. Crockett's reply was sharp, precise, and utterly confident. "I'm an attorney, Sean. I know how to conduct discovery." The studio had fallen completely silent. Even the camera operators, Seasoned professionals who had seen countless political skirmishes had stopped moving, recognizing they were witnessing something truly unprecedented. A Fox News host, the network's star, was being systematically, brutally destroyed on his own show, with his own audience watching every agonizing second unfold. But Crockett wasn't finished. She had spent months, perhaps even years, preparing for this exact moment, for this precise opportunity to confront the insidious machinery of misinformation, and she was going to make it count. "But here's what really bothers me about what you do, Sean," she said, her voice now taking on a deeper, more serious tone, transcending the immediate political sparring. "You don't just lie to people, you make them afraid. You tell them their country is being destroyed, their values are under attack, their way of life is threatened." She leaned forward, her gaze piercing, looking directly into the camera lens, addressing the millions of viewers whose fears Hannity so shamelessly exploited. "That's not journalism. That's not even entertainment. That's manipulation." The audience, once a homogeneous block of Hannity loyalists, was now completely captivated. Even his staunchest supporters were listening intently, a silent testament to the undeniable truth she was speaking. "The truth is, Sean," Crockett continued, her voice a clarion call, "most Americans want the same things. They want good jobs, safe communities, quality schools for their kids, and affordable health care. Democrats and Republicans might disagree on how to achieve those goals, but we're not enemies." She turned back to Hannity, who sat silently, utterly defeated, apparently unsure how to respond to such a fundamental appeal for unity on his own notoriously divisive show. His silence was deafening. "But you can't make money selling unity, can you, Sean?" Crockett pressed, the rhetorical question hanging heavy in the air. "Division pays better. Fear gets better ratings." With a final, decisive gesture, Crockett gathered her papers, neatening them with a quiet dignity, and stood up, preparing to deliver her undeniable final blow. "So here's my challenge to you and to everyone watching. Stop letting people like Sean Hannity profit from your anger. Stop letting them convince you that your fellow Americans are your enemies." She looked directly at Hannity one last time, a look of profound disappointment rather than anger. And then the impossible happened. The studio erupted in applause. It wasn't the polite, obligatory clapping that usually followed guest appearances. This was genuine, spontaneous, sustained applause rising from an audience that had just witnessed something truly extraordinary. A Fox News host, the network's star, was being systematically, brutally destroyed on his own show, with his own audience watching every agonizing second unfold. As Crockett walked off the set, the stunned silence in the studio gave way to the quiet, almost reverent murmuring of the crew. Hannity, still seated, appeared less a television personality and more a wax figure, his usual bombastic energy entirely deflated. He had nothing to say, and for perhaps the first time in his career, he had no script to follow, no pre-rehearsed soundbite to deploy. He had been beaten at his own game, on his own turf, in front of his own audience. Within minutes of the segment ending, the digital world exploded. Social media platforms, typically a cacophony of partisan noise, unified in a rare moment of collective awe. The hashtag Crockett Receipts began trending nationwide, appearing faster than Fox News' servers could handle the traffic, spreading like wildfire across every corner of the internet. Clips of her methodical takedown, particularly the moment she pulled out the Fox News memos and Hannity's face went white, became instant viral sensations. Conservative commentators, usually quick to defend their standard-bearer, struggled to articulate a coherent defense of Hannity's performance. Even his most ardent allies found it nearly impossible to argue with the sheer weight of documented evidence Crockett had presented. The internal memo she'd referenced immediately became the subject of intense speculation, with legal experts predicting potential investigations into the ethically dubious coordination between Fox News and Republican political operations. Liberal Twitter was predictably euphoric, with prominent Democrats hailing Crockett's performance as a masterclass in handling hostile media. But perhaps more significantly, moderate and even some conservative voices joined the chorus of praise, recognizing that Crockett had demonstrated something far beyond mere partisan politics. She had shown what authentic leadership, grounded in truth and meticulous preparation, truly looked like. Behind the scenes at Fox News, executives were plunged into crisis mode. Hannity's show was not just a program, it was their flagship, their most valuable asset, a foundational pillar of their network's identity. Seeing their star host systematically dismantled, live on air by a freshman Democratic Congresswoman, was a public relations disaster of unprecedented, catastrophic proportions. The network's initial response was predictably defensive, with other hosts attempting to claim that Crockett had ambushed Hannity with selectively edited documents and coordinated talking points. But the defense rang hollow. Hollower than ever, precisely because the documents she had cited were all publicly available and easily verifiable. More damaging for Fox News was the harsh, unflinching light Crockett's appearance shone on their broader editorial practices. Journalism schools across the country began immediately using the segment as a case study, a stark, undeniable illustration of the profound difference between actual, ethical reporting and political advocacy thinly disguised as news. For Crockett herself, the appearance transformed her overnight from a promising freshman congresswoman into a national political star. Speaking requests poured in from across the country, with Democratic organizations clamoring for her to headline their events. But Crockett, true to her principled conviction, used her newfound platform not for personal advancement, but to consistently amplify the message she had so powerfully delivered on Hannity's show. In subsequent interviews, she tirelessly emphasized the urgent need for Americans to demand better from both their media and their politicians. The long-term impact of the confrontation extended far beyond that one unforgettable television appearance. Crockett had demonstrated with irrefutable clarity that preparation, facts, and principled conviction could still triumph over bluster, misinformation, and manufactured outrage. Political analysts noted that her performance represented a new, vital model for how Democrats should engage with hostile media. Instead of perpetually playing defense against loaded, trap-laden questions, she had gone aggressively on offense with documented evidence. Instead of passively accepting false premises, she had challenged them directly, exposing them for what they were. The appearance also marked a crucial turning point in how many Americans viewed political media itself. Crockett's systematic, live fact-checking of Hannity's claims, broadcast directly to his own audience, exposed the glaring, shameful gap between what political entertainers claimed to do and what they actually did. Perhaps most importantly, her impassioned appeal for unity and her courageous challenge to Americans to demand better resonated deeply across traditional party lines. In an era of escalating polarization, Jasmine Crockett had reminded the entire country that most Americans, at their core, shared common goals, even if they disagreed on the methods to achieve them. 3 months later, when asked about the appearance that had made her a household name, Crockett, with characteristic humility, deflected credit to the larger principles at stake. It wasn't about destroying Sean Hannity, she said in an interview. It was about defending the truth. The Hannity appearance became required viewing in political communication classes across the country, studied as an ultimate example of how thorough preparation and unyielding principle could overcome even the most hostile media environment. For Sean Hannity, the confrontation marked the beginning of a slow but undeniable decline in his influence and credibility. While he remained on the air, his authority as a conservative voice, his very ability to command belief, had been fundamentally undermined by those 15 minutes when Jasmine Crockett flipped his own script against him. The lesson for American politics was clear, undeniable, and resounding. In an era saturated with spin, manufactured outrage, and cynical deception, there was still immense, transformative power in simply telling the truth, backing it up with irrefutable evidence, and courageously challenging those who profit from division.
Jasmine Crockett had walked into that Fox News studio as a freshman Congresswoman and walked out as an enduring symbol of what authentic political leadership, armed with truth, could truly accomplish. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through one of the most pivotal moments in recent political media. If this story resonated with you, if it left you inspired by the power of truth and preparation, please do us a huge favor. Like this story, share it with your friends and family, drop your thoughts and comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another deep dive into the moments that truly shape our world.